Welcome everybody to another episode of Sportsdata PC. I'm your host Reese. Today we're going to get into week 2 of the XFL. It was very exciting. The crowd was there again. I believe Seattle had the highest attendance, which was about close to 30,000. We had some shutouts. Our first shutout, which is the game I'm going to talk about right now between the DC Defenders and the New York Guardians, which DC won that game 27-0. Not much I can really take away from this game. Offensively, the Guardians look horrible. Matt McGloin only acquired 44 yards passing total, had 2 interceptions. On the ground, Tim Cook had 10 attempts for 39 yards, 0 touchdowns. Their leading receiver the game before, Mikael McKay, had 3 receptions for 30 yards, 0 touchdowns. So again, no offensive production in week 2 from the Guardians. On the other hand, the Defenders, Cardell Jones again lights it up. He's 23 out of 37, 276, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Not bad. He's looking good. If you catch these games, you can actually see them actually playing. I'm not just stating the stats just to state the stats. I mean, I've actually seen these games, man. And I'm starting to see who's looking good. Even though it's only been 2 weeks, you can still tell, man, who's ready and who's not. Their rushing attack, the Defenders, wasn't that bad. Pumphrey had 12 attempts for 52 yards, 0 TDs. Their 2 wide receivers almost eclipsed 100 yards rushing. So I know Tompkins had a touchdown, had 6 receptions, 92 yards, and Ross had 4 receptions, 95 yards. They also had an interception by Matt Elam, the former first-round pick of the Baltimore Ravens a few years ago. So this was really an all-around game for the Defenders. They've started off with 2 home games, so they will be playing away their next game, I believe. So, our next game happens to be the Tampa Bay Vipers and the Seattle Dragons. This game was good up until the 4th quarter. There's not much I can really take away from the Vipers. They're still having quarterback issues. This game, they didn't even start Flowers, but they didn't have Murray. But they started someone named Cornelius, who was 16 out of 27, 154, and 2 interceptions, not even a touchdown. So they still have some quarterback issues there. On the ground, they were okay. Patrick had 14 attempts for 73 yards. There's some work that needs to be done for the offense for the Vipers. On the other hand, the Dragons didn't look too bad. Brandon Silvers was 7 for 18, 91 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Their wide receiver, Keenan Reynolds, got a touchdown. He had 3 receptions, 87 yards, and a touchdown. If you've seen that long post he had in the game, that was probably the only bright spot. Quick note, their rushing attack, the Dragons, is led by a 3-headed monster. It's Trey Williams, Kenneth Farrell, and Daquan Gardner, who all actually played in the AAF. And, look at these numbers. They each had about 10 rushing attempts apiece. So they ran the ball about 30-plus times. Each of them split that. First carries was 45 yards. Second guy was 45 yards. And the third guy was 27 yards. So you can start to tell that Seattle wants to be a running back by committee. And they also had 3 team interceptions to go along with that 12th man. So shout out to the Dragons, man. Our next and third game happens to be Dallas Renegades and the Los Angeles Wildcats. Both teams were winless. So this was a very tough game. I thought Landry Jones was okay. Obviously, they ran the ball good. Artis Payne had 14 attempts, 99 yards for 2 touchdowns. I believe he did eclipse 100. Lance Dunbar, who was his backup, had about 6 attempts, 42 yards. Landry Jones was had 28 completions, 40 attempts, 305 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. So the 2 interceptions hurt him. Again, he was hurt. He hasn't been playing, so we'll see what's up next week. Their leading receiver was a 6'8" tight end. Yes, I'm hearing that it's a 6'8" tight end. Parham had 5 receptions, 76 yards, and a touchdown. They were targeting him a lot in this game. And Crockett had 2 receptions, 57 yards. Look, there needs to be a lot more explosive plays. Just a lot more. A lot more. So that's what I can take away from the Renegades. On the other hand, the Los Angeles Wildcats, the few bright spots that they had was Josh Johnson coming back, and he looked okay too. He was 18 for 34, 196, had 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, so that's good, the turnovers. Nelson Spruce was their leading receiver with 6 receptions, 89 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So far, he's looking good so far these first couple weeks. The team also had 2 interceptions, and Dallas was still able to pull that one out. So we'll see. And our last game, and I saved the best for last, was the St. Louis Battlehawks and the Houston Roughnecks. This game was 28-24. The Battlehawks, look, Talmu, Matt Jones, and Christian Michael all led the rushing attack. Jones had 16 attempts for 44 yards. Michael had 15 attempts for 38 yards. And I hope I'm saying his name right. Jordan Ta'amahu had 8 attempts for 32 yards and a touchdown. He was also 30 for 37, which was the best numbers I've seen from the QB. He was only 7 short from passes from being perfect. He was 30 for 37, 284, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So he's by far has kind of been the best. Him and I can say Walker has been the best. His receivers, Washington had 6 receptions for 77 yards and a touchdown, and Pearson L had 9 receptions for 50 yards and a touchdown. So both his leading receivers had a touchdown apiece. For Houston, Butler led the rushing attack, 7 attempts, 28 yards and a touchdown. Also, Walker had 4 attempts, 27 yards. Walker had 20 completions, 31 attempts, 170 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And then again, for the second week in a row, his leading receiver is Cam Phillips, who had 8 receptions, 63 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So this guy has a total, I believe, has a total of 4 or 5 touchdowns already in 2 weeks. But we still got several weeks to play, still a lot more to cover. So I'm going to hit you guys with this again next week on week 3 with highlights and just analysis on what I thought. I thought week 2 was a step better than week 1. Every week it has to get better. Every week the crowd has to be there. So till then, man, make sure you subscribe. Sportsdata PC, XFL week 2. Let's go.